and welcome to another episode of the Rollwise Podcast, the show where we talk about things related to games and sometimes games themselves. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a debrief on our recent playthrough of Deadlands using the Savage World Adventure Edition. And we thought we'd want to just take an episode, chat about it a little bit, recap what we thought about it, and of course, invite anybody that has experience playing Deadlands and everything like that, or the Savage World system, to share their experience, tell us how it goes, and all that stuff in the comments below. So recently, I think as in the beginning of the year, we hit our 500 subscriber mark, and we're really excited that people are tuning in and saying hi and doing all that stuff. So if you do like what we produce here and all the content that we make, don't be afraid to jump in the comments, give us a like, subscribe, and if you want to know when we post these episodes, hit that notification button. We appreciate it, I'd say.
Yeah, we do. Thank you, everybody.
So going into the Savage Worlds stuff, I, not to monologue for too long here, but just to kind of give a baseline of it. But Savage Worlds is basically, people call it kind of a fast-paced role-playing game that's pretty accommodating to different genres or settings. Looking at the published work for it and everything like that, it's actually quite robust. I didn't even know how much stuff was out there, and I played in a few different settings for Savage Worlds, but like very minimally. It's definitely not a game I have a deep experience with. At its core, the game philosophy that they've really tried to adhere to is fast, furious, and fun. I don't know if you guys caught that when you were reading through the book, but that's right at the beginning of the rules section. They want it to be fast, furious, and fun. And I thought that was kind of a nice principle to kind of explain like what we're attempting to do. Now, whether or not they achieve that, I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit more. But the things that really make the game stand out, first of all, are going to be its exploding dice, because oh my gosh, when you roll those dice, you get some explosions, aka rolling the best number on that particular die, and you roll it again. Sometimes you get another exploding die. Oh, that is satisfying as fuck. Oh my god. And then, of course, you also get bettings, which are miscellaneous kind of meta currency that allow you as the player to take a little bit more control over the initiative, influence the game in certain ways, and stuff like that.
Fix mistakes.
Fix your mistakes.
Yeah, allows you to
Survive
reroll.
your mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe
from bad dice.
Yep.
So, so they're just kind of like a multi-purpose tool that's a little bit more potent than, say, like a luck or like a reroll per se, because they can do. I think they can go as far as help you influence the story if you want to spend them in that way.
Yeah, you can change the narrative with a Benny. You can change the narrative.
Mhm.
You can reroll dice. You can just fix something. Like you can just
Mhm.
do your recovery test for either like if you're shaken or like to soak a wound. Like you can just make it a
Mhm.
success. So
Yeah. And of course, so I mean, kind of testing the limits of Savage Worlds and its ability to do pretty much any genre. We did Deadlands, kind of a Weird West, the original Weird West role playing game, right? I mean, is that kind of
I believe
the
so.
general?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
So giving that a crack and seeing how it went, we actually have an actual play that we can link to in the description. So if you guys want to check it out, give us notes, tell us how much you like it, hate it, whatever you like to do. Go ahead and do that.
Attack the
But I've
GM or
was not
Marshall.
me this time.
You can just attack the Marshal in the
This
comments.
guy.
That's fine.
This is the guy. So, but yeah. So let us know how we did. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you decide to go ahead and listen to those longer episodes and stuff. But there, I'm done monologuing. I think it's now more time to talk about the game. How does that sound?
Indeed. Savage Worlds is interesting because it is a basic system. Like it's a system
Mhm.
that's made to play with other systems. So what you have to do is you have to get their core book, which has their core rules in it. And
Mhm.
then if you're not running like if you don't make a world of your own straight out of that book, they have the expansion books. They have
Mhm.
Deadlands, which is what we played. They have Rifts, and a couple others. I don't remember. Those are the two that I know of. What else do they have? Do
Well,
you
they have
know?
like the Land of Fire for a game called like Hellfrost.
Which is
Like a
like a
specific
fantasy
setting.
game, which is like a
Yeah, it's
fantasy setting.
fantasy set in the cold, unless you go to the kind of Arabian Nights version that it has. Among, oh man, many more. I don't even have like a list of all of them, but people have been publishing stuff under the Savage Worlds. Even Pathfinder has a Savage Worlds,
Yeah,
like kind of
conversion.
conversion that you can play. So if you like the Pathfinder world and setting, but you really like the kind of pulpier feel of the lighter rule set of Savage Worlds, you can kind of port your characters over and
Yeah.
have fun that way too. So
So my feelings on the rules is they are a bit more crunchy than say an ultra narrative game, but I do think they're pretty fast.
mhm.
What did you guys think of the few combats? We didn't have a ton of combats, but we had a few. Um, what did you guys think?
I thought they went pretty smoothly. Um, there's some crunch. There's a little more crunch than I thought there was going to. Well, no, actually, there was probably about the right. There's a little less crunch than say in D&D, you know,
Mhm.
but I thought it was okay. I thought that I did think the combats moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, the
But
wounds.
we didn't manage to get into any 40-minute combats that made me want to,
Well, one thing I think I
question my
like.
life choices.
Yeah, one thing I like that is different than D&D. It doesn't have the wound abstraction of, oh, you have 100, or hit point extraction. You have 100 hit points you have to chew
Yeah.
through. It's pretty easy to make a lower level with just one wound or something
Mhm.
like that. That's basically like, oh, if they hit it, they kill it.
Mhm.
Or like even a boss like with a health track that you guys had, like he was pretty tough.
Mhm.
You weren't just gonna take you probably weren't gonna take him out in a round.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
so it gave it teeth, but it didn't make it painfully long where you're like, oh, they have 100 hit points. I swing and I hit them for 5. I swing and I hit them for
Mhm.
5. I swing and I hit them for 10.
Or ooh,
Or
1.
three.
Yeah.
Or
Or I
one
didn't
might
hit
say.
him or I didn't hit him at all. There's
Yeah.
not the characters feel capable. I felt like the characters, even though they were technically starting characters, they felt pretty capable of doing everything
Mhm.
that we had them do. Unless you just failed brutally with all of your ones. Um, I do like the fact that they give you a bonus. One of the things that I did like, and I should have probably pointed this out to you more, is that one of the things you get as players, as wildcards, they're called in the game. One of the things that you get is that the extra D6. Like other stuff doesn't get that extra D6.
Mhm.
Um, unless they're like the big bad. And then they're built more like a regular character. But so
Yeah.
that's why the vampire was the master vampire was so strong, is
Mhm.
because he was rolling a d6 with you guys.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting, is you actually have an advantage for being like, you are more confident simply because you're a hero and you get that extra dice.
Nice.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think if you look at that core philosophy, that fast, furious, and fun, I don't feel like we got really bogged down in anything. And I'm not really sure. Does furious relate to kind of the swingy nature of the game? Like, because I have to say that having those exploding dice, like, because you say you shouldn't have been able to kill the big bad in the first turn, but like the opportunity presents
You could
itself
have, yeah.
in a way that doesn't really exist in like D&D, that you're like, oh well, this monster has 200 hit points. Well, the fighter, no matter how well he rolls with a sword, can never just lop its head off, or
Right.
unless there's a specific kill switch that comes along with it. Whereas in this, you can get explode, 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 and you can do a significant amount of damage.
Yeah, you
In
get a
terms of
significant amount of raises.
Mhm.
And yeah, you'll eat up those wounds. Like it would have taken 4 raises though to kill the one guy in one shot, which is
Which is a
possible, but
lot.
pretty unlikely that you're
Oh
gonna
yeah,
do
like
that.
I'm not saying like you should go into this being like 4 raises only. I got
Only
this.
4 raises? I got this.
So,
Um
but
uh
the same applies to the players too. Like, there for that kind of unpredictability where because the enemies can get raises too,
no,
and
they don't explode though.
don't they?
No.
I thought
Mm-mm.
I thought they could, huh?
Not the normal ones. The big bads, I believe. The big bads are basically function more like wild cards. So they can, like the
Mm,
vampire could have, the master vampire, but the lesser vampires couldn't. They either hit
okay.
you or don't. So what you're kind of depending on with the lesser vampires is for you to get stunned one turn if you get injured,
Hmm.
and then the next turn you'll probably you'll start taking wounds if you get unlucky.
Yeah.
Which leads to an interesting problem with action economy again. Like if you get ganged up on in this game, you could die pretty easy because the first one's going to do the stun, and then everything after that, unless you soak, it's wounds.
Mm,
So like if you're fighting 3 things and they all get through, like there's 3 wounds and
Yeah,
you're
it felt like
incapacitated.
every combat somebody was in danger.
yeah.
Usually Mike's character Chester.
Usually Chester.
Well, out of curiosity, then, does this game? Did you see or feel like this game could suffer from the death spiral, where, like as you gain those wounds, it becomes harder for you to accomplish things. Therefore, it's easier for you to get wounded. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
Like,
yeah, it has a death spiral because that -1 for you, like that starts to become a big deal. Like if you're wounded, you're hurt. So
okay,
it encourages, like, it's not, the thing to remember is this is one of those games that's pulpy but not super heroic. So
Right.
it's not a stand and fight the monster heroically sort of game. It's not D&D. And I think you guys did it, like, I think you guys made, role playing wise, you guys made all the right decisions for hardened but mortal cowboys. Like when Mike was wounded, what did you do? You drug him back to the church. You drug him back to a safe place to mend his wounds. And I think that should be expected in this type of game, a pulp game. And
That's
wounds
fair.
aren't too hard to get rid of as long as you have some downtime and somebody with a mediocre medical skill. Because like you did,
Yeah, I
I
didn't have a
think,
great medical skill.
yeah, and
It was
you,
working.
yeah, and you got rid of 2 wounds, I think, and he only had 1, I think, at the time. But you got rid of 2 wounds, and that's like most of what you're going to do. So yes, there's a death spiral, and yes, if your players are overzealous, let's use that word, overzealous, they could get in a spot of trouble and probably
Well,
get themselves killed.
it does make me wonder, like, how that would work in a game like Pathfinder, then, where you're kind of expected to be slightly heroic at some
Well, they do
point,
change the rules for the game. Like they do have, that's why they have a secondary book for each of the settings, is
Yeah.
because they do offer some changed rules. So like armor probably does more in Pathfinder, I would assume.
Okay.
Like you guys weren't armored at all. Armor helps.
Yeah, we weren't. Yeah,
Hey,
we were not.
I did have chaps that I took off at the beginning.
Well, you're cowboys, so you're not supposed to be in chainmail and plate mail.
That's a different
So
game.
yes, it's a different game. So, but like armor helps, higher toughness helps.
Being not old and infirm helps.
Yeah. I mean, there were some interesting character construction decisions made,
which I love, which I think worked out perfect. Which I think this game is good for that. Is like it encourages you to make creative character decisions as opposed to I'm just the fighter and I'm just going to get hit a lot. Like, and that's what I want. That's really what I want from a game is I want creative character decisions.
Sure. So let's touch back on that bennies thing and everything like that, because I think a part of the fun really comes from spending and gaining bennies, because is there a way you gain bennies mechanically? Like, I think that's a thing, right? Like if you do
There is a way. I don't remember what it is. There's certain skills that'll give you, there are certain edges that give you bennies. Like yours had one that gave you at the beginning of every session. It gave you another one.
Yeah.
They are rewarded a meta currency for the GM to reward. And I didn't really realize now, especially that first game, how big of a deal they would be because we didn't roll any dice. But later I realized they're a pretty huge deal, and you probably should be, as a GM, if your players do something cool, reward them with bennies, I think. Or sorry, Marshall.
Well, and I think, and because I think that's part of the fun, is because, and I hate to say, like, this is the whole like dance monkey dance moment, but you do try to like get more into your character and have more fun to earn a Benny. Be like, oh, I'm going to do something cool and exciting, to try to earn that. But then you can also spend them in cool and sometimes exciting ways. You can save your character from, you can have that near death experience you always wanted, but not actually die, or you can remove the shaken, so you can kind of just, as you said, it's pulpy, so you kind of shake it off and then
and you can do your turn as normal.
So I thought that was kind of it gave you a lot there, but I think that I would be curious to see how that would play out in like a longer game, like how frequently bennies are given and received, especially in those tense moments where you're like, well, I'm chasing after a master vampire.
I think it's one of those things that when you're more knowledgeable of the game, as a more knowledgeable marshal or GM, depending on what Savage Worlds game you're playing. I think it's one of those things you would discuss in session 0, because if you have players who are super creative and they're way in character, way invested in doing cool stuff all the time, like I would reward them as a GM to them. But if they're newer players and maybe not as comfortable with ad-libbing or doing that sort of thing, maybe giving them one at the beginning of a session to kind of encourage them to try and earn more or do cool stuff with the bennies, I think is probably a good idea. That's probably what I would do.
That's a good idea.
But because bennies are one of those things that like they're definitely made to encourage that sort of play. Like they're a meta currency that's like, And they would be better in person. Again, this is one of those things because you have poker chips and stuff. You actually like physically hand the players like a recognition for doing something cool.
Sure.
And I love meta currencies like that. I like rewards for doing cool stuff, but more so I like being able to make up for issues. Like if I screw up a roll or crit fail or something, I like to be able to kind of compensate for that.
Or maybe hedge it in your favor, like I do know that, when we were playing Fallout, like when you guys really started to get those extra action points or whatever kind of sorted out, we were like, oh, I'm just going to spend lots of action points, and by succeeding I get some refund back. And and you kind of were it kind of became this like really fast paced, kind of give and take for how this currency was spent. So I'm wondering if some groups actually experience it where it's kind of
I'm sure they
just
do.
flows like water, like your bennies, you're spending bennies to do cool shit, and then your GM is giving you bennies because you're doing cool shit. And
yeah, I think that's really the encouragement of the Savage World system is that. And that's what I think they mean by furious and fun, is that sort of like tempo that you start to get during a combat.
Yeah.
Or just anything, just playing.
Yeah, just even in play, just like it kind of builds on each other. So, so I think that Savage Worlds, would you guys say that Savage Worlds is beloved by people, or like, I mean, is it a favorably received game?
Yeah, a lot of people really like it. A lot of people, if a lot of people are looking at like converting a system, a lot of times they seem to want to convert it to Savage Worlds. Shadowrun, Earthdawn, the more crunchier games, they look to kind of convert into this, I think, because it is a little bit easier, but a little crunchy, so you kind of get both. Which, yeah, I think it was good. I think I enjoyed it a lot more than I would. I'd like to play it again so I can get more used to the rules. Maybe even that Rifts game someday.
So we tried to play Rifts. We didn't make it very far in that, though, did we?
That wasn't because of the rules. That was because the GM decided they didn't want to run the game
scheduling
anymore.
Conflicts. Let's call it that.
Well, nah, he just said he didn't want to he didn't really feel up to running a game anymore.
We broke the game so bad it was. No, I don't. Maybe it was us. Maybe it was him. I don't know. This is one of those weird. It's not you, it's me kind of thing.
I don't think it was our Cyborg and Leyline Walker that did it.
Oh, but that reminds me. We didn't talk about playing cards. So the playing card component, like the initiative stuff, that's kind of a big deal. I know that they do that, and Dragonbane is another time I experienced cards for initiative and stuff. What do you guys think about that kind of gimmicky card initiative business? Jeff, I mean, you were playing it from a place perspective. But
I thought it worked for the system, for the way the system is, because there wasn't a lot of stacking of abilities like between characters. Like, my big complaint in Dungeons and Dragons is there's a lot of times where you want somebody to debuff something and then you want your attacks to come in, or you want somebody to get buffed and then the attacks to go out, right? And if the initiative is all effed up, the attacks go off and then the buff or debuff goes off after it doesn't really, I mean, I guess it can apply towards the next turn possibly, but I'm usually in favor of a collaborative narrative type of initiative. But, there were edges. Like, I had an edge that if I got a really, really low initiative, I got a benefit from that because I got to study my opponent, and it was, I could actually ignore things like cover. So there were ways to kind of overcome stuff. So I thought it worked fine. It was as good as rolling dice and randomly assigning the. It's like any other random system.
Right.
I thought it worked fine.
Yeah, I think it worked well for to kind of fit the Deadlands theme. I think that's kind of cool. As far as I don't know, any sort of randomization for if you're running a game with random initiative, I think any sort of number generator probably works. So I don't think it was that big of a deal. Random matters a lot more when it's a more tactical game, and I don't necessarily know if this is like where, like you said, debuffing leads to somebody doing something else, or where you're trying to set up like combos and stuff like that. Random initiative comes.
Yeah, I need you to set him on fire so I can.
Yeah. I can explode the fire that's already on him, that sort of thing. Exactly. But I think it worked fine for this. I think it was kind of cool.
So I mean, not to just only gush about the system, were there things that you found that you critiqued about it that you were, because you did the most reading, I think, Brent, to kind of prepare for the game. Were there things that you didn't like about it? I mean, so to get the obvious out of the way, like the Savage World Adventure Edition, that's the obvious critique. Make people aware of what fucking edition we need to be playing and
Yeah.
what to buy.
Don't
'Cause
hide it under a bunch of names that make it harder, or publish them with dates or something. Don't make it
Yeah.
hard to find what edition you should be, like what update you're
Yeah.
looking at.
Because I mean, as much as I want to say like fifth edition is like, oh, you should be playing fifth edition because everyone's playing that, and everyone's playing adventure edition. But in this one, there's kind of like I think people play older editions, so just like in
Right.
D&D, but that
Well,
doesn't tell you what's the latest edition.
and that was another thing that happened in the other game where we played Savage Worlds is we had the one book, which is the newest
Mhm.
book, but the source book for the Risk game that we were playing was the old edition. So like some of the and it's subtle. There's subtle changes. So like you don't realize what's going on until like you're in the middle of something and something doesn't make sense.
Yeah, some of that didn't
Mhm.
translate.
Yeah. But one of the things I don't know, like what is something that I found that I didn't necessarily like? I feel like the rules are a little bit clunky at times, because there's a lot of like there's the roll to hit, roll to soak, roll for spirit. Like I feel like there's a lot of rolls in there that maybe could be pared back a little. But again, they're there to protect the character, so I understand why they're there. But like, I feel like some of those could be rejiggered a little bit to be different.
Mhm.
Like the shake and wound mechanic is interesting to me too, where it's like the first time you get hit, anytime you're going to be shaken. Any wounds after that, or any damage done after that is going to be a wound, and that's kind of an interesting system to me too. It's a little weird because you're not most of
Mhm.
the time you're not going to be most of the time, unless they do very well, you're not going to be hurt in the first round of combat.
Right.
Okay. And
Uh,
Jeff, what about you? Any kind of critiques that you developed
the
over?
thing that I found the weirdest is you really do need 2 books to play,
Mhm.
and there are like we'll just say edges, okay? Because this goes across multiple categories of lists of things that you were looking at, but you're looking at edges, right? Some exist in the core book, some exist in the supplement book. They're not arranged in the same order.
Yeah.
Like just like looking at the table of contents, like in one book it was in like the first quarter of the book, and in the other book it was more like halfway. Like it was hard sometimes to find stuff that you wanted, and some were used and some weren't, and it was awkward flipping back and forth looking at these long lists of stuff in two separate books.
And it was kind of weird to
Yeah.
know where to find it sometimes.
It was, and then like my character sheet, like the stuff I used the most, took up, I don't know, like a third of a page. And then I had to copy and paste all of the descriptions of all the other stuff because there
Mhm.
was so much information in them, and, not like an easy way to get it on. Like if you had sheets of paper, I would have probably had 3 sheets of paper, like for my character sheet. There was just, it wound up feeling like a lot of bookkeeping, and
Mhm.
I didn't find the organization super great between the 2 books. But
Yeah, I was surprised when they had like your list of spells. Like when they had your list of spells, and we found out, oh, they're not all in the Deadlands book. Some of them are in the core book. I felt it weird that they didn't have a page number. Like they should have had,
yeah,
Savage Worlds Adventurers Edition page da 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 da, to where you could just go look at those pages for your spells instead of putting a whole list in there of like they just put the whole list of like spells in there, powers, and they should have just put like the page numbers in. Find them here. I think would have probably been better.
yeah. That so it made character creation. I mean, we spent what, an hour
Yeah,
or so together on camera,
Mhm.
and then I spent another hour and a half, 2
yeah.
hours on my own, like going back and forth in these things, trying to look like
Yeah. It is
it,
weird
it,
how
it
they
was
wouldn't
weird.
Well, if
You
I
know,
was a
like
better marshal, and I did think about this, but I didn't do it, I would have went through and I would have made a cheat sheet for you with all of them on there, which I almost did, but then I was like, nah, I'm good.
It's a lot of no, it was a lot of work. You should have.
yeah.
And
Well,
I'm not saying that there isn't a certain amount of bookkeeping in tabletop role playing, because there is. There always
mhm,
has been. And it gets easier the more you play one system. But like we
mhm,
jump around a lot of
Mhm.
systems, and so
Yeah, in Savage Worlds, it's just different. But having two
yeah,
books is two
it's
books with core rules in them is kind of interesting because it's
yes,
definitely different.
yeah. It
yeah.
isn't like the old days, like say third edition D&D 3.5, where you had a core book, and then you had a shitload of supplemental books. But the supplemental books didn't have core rules; they had supplemental rules.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, so like if I needed to look at a list of something, it was all in the one book or the other, not little bits of some and both.
Yeah, it was like a splat book with mostly setting stuff and maybe a few like
Sure.
updates to things, but
Yeah.
it wasn't just, oh, I need to have this book open and this
Yeah.
book
It
open,
doesn't make the game unplayable, but it does. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck. That's all.
Yeah,
which is a
that's
pun
fair.
because there were vampires in the game.
Good thing I didn't say
So,
pain in the ass.
There you go.
so I was trying to think of like what I would call a critique about it, and I really didn't have any major critiques that had come up just in our example of play. Like because what you said, Jeff, makes sense. I mean, I did feel that was kind of clunky too, having to look between the two of them, and like because one of my whatever edges, or no, one of my hindrances, one end hindrance and edge was from the core Savage World book, but
Mhm.
then the other stuff came from the Deadlands book. And
Dead
but it's
Worlds,
just it
new
was like little
RPG coming from Mike Foster Productions.
Dead Worlds. Ooh,
I'm pretty sure
thousands.
I'm pretty sure the combination of dead and world has been generated somewhere as an RPG
Oh, it
already.
has to be. No, it has to be. There has to be a Dead Worlds. Sorry.
It could be if there isn't. Aha!
Trademark, copyright,
Just
TM.
my system agnostic general universal role playing game. Dead Worlds. Come on in. Nothing's happening. Um,
Across
so
1,000 Dead Worlds.
yeah. But I would have to say that it was, I mean, just it was kind of an interesting game that I think, depending on what you're looking for the game, I could easily see people being excited about the Savage World system and like overselling it, because I do feel like there is stuff that the Savage Worlds is good for, but I could also see that people would feel like if they wanted a more crunchy game, like Savage Worlds, it didn't really
No,
feel like it's going to give you a very
you're
crunchy
not
game, because
really
there's a
gonna.
lot of
Yeah,
flexibility with how they do this stuff and everything like that.
and
And I
it's
feel,
not made to be tactical either. Like you're not gonna
well,
get like the tactical crunch, I don't think.
it's got like it's trying to walk this line where it gives you some tactical and gives you some narrative and tries to be this weird in the middle thing, which I think that what they've done with the rules works really well. Like, I mean, how we described, oh well, how does what was that line I said? Well, how does eternity look? Goddamn, and I threw that Molotov cocktail, like you could be more tactical with how that works and everything. Add maybe a spirit roll when I see him to see if I even think to throw a fire in his face, or if I'm just terrified.
Well, that
I
really
don't
wouldn't
know.
be, but I mean tactical as in like gaining bonuses by being tactical. Like there's no flanking.
Isn't there?
There's no, not really. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't know. Well,
Um,
I'm just saying is that
I mean,
but
it
is
would be
there?
easy. I mean, it would be easy to add.
Yeah.
That's the thing is Savage Worlds runs that general system feeling.
Hmm.
You can add a lot or you can take a lot away depending on the
Hmm.
setting that you want to run. And I think that's its strength. It's just like D&D in that fact. It's like you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it because it's very it's very wide focused. Like it's very
Yeah.
intended to be played in a bunch of different a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. General
Yeah,
enough to be useful, but also general enough to really give you a lot of headaches if you try to go too far away from the base rules.
Or feel like it lacks flavor. Like if you just
Mm,
if you made up like a fantasy game and ran Deadlands, or made up a fantasy game and ran Savage Worlds, it would be very easy to make the game feel just very vanilla, cut and paste fantasy world,
mm,
because it would just be all the general Like you would need to do things to it to make it feel your own, or to make it feel more flavorful. That's why the books like Deadland. That's why the books exist. Deadlands and Rifts is because they interject rules and like
Sure.
character packages and stuff to make it feel like that game.
Yeah.
So it'd be very easy to make it just feel like a kind of a boring
Right.
D&D setting, like just
No, I can see that.
general.
I can also see that if you are the type of GM that really likes to build your own kind of worlds and your own kind of settings, your own kind of games, it feels like a pretty easy framework to use to bolt on other things. Take concepts from other places or story arcs or all kinds of stuff, and then just update the stats or
Yeah. Yeah.
bolt it onto the framework that you're building.
Well,
And I
and
think you touched on that earlier, Brent.
Yeah, mechanic concept. Yeah, the mechanic concepts I think you can play with quite a bit in the Savage World, because it is kind of a basic system.
yeah. Well, and truthfully, there may be other things out there that comes from longer play, like how it levels up, and like, because I know that there were rankings and stuff like that, and I don't even know how you get to those other rankings other than just maybe do cool shit, which is a fine
Oh no, there's an
method.
experience system. There's an
Oh,
experience
there is.
system. Yeah. There's an
So
experience
I
system.
mean,
It's made to play like any sort of it's made to play like any sort of game that you want to play, whether it's a campaign or one shots or whatever. I mean, it's made for that. And the rules are all in there. Like that's the thing, is there's so many rules in the regular Savage Worlds book because it's a general game. And
yeah.
what I was gonna say is it's not like the reason, like, so Deadlands has its own system, which has more of the card involvement. And I think and the question is, why would you run this over that? Well, this system's easier. It's not so narrowly focused on being Deadlands, and that makes it kind of a little bit more easy to play, because it is a less crunchy system than the Deadlands system. I mean, the Deadlands system is made a little bit more crunchy because it's not a general game.
Yeah. So fair enough. So I think with that, this is our experience. This is how we played it. This is what we learned about it. I like Savage Worlds so far. Like, I haven't found any reason not to like it. It does have a lot of flavor. Especially if you like pulpy games, I can really see you enjoying this kind of game. But I would say, if you haven't played it, you can easily pick it up from a game store. I think the main Savage Worlds books are definitely in circulation. I can't say where you'd get the Deadlands Savage Worlds. I think the PDFs are available online
on Pinnacle's website.
And I think that there was recently a Kickstarter, and I know Jeff did a little bit of. You did something on the Kickstarter, didn't you?
I supported the Risk Kickstarter.
Yeah,
Riffs?
Brent did the Rift Kickstarter. I did the the reprint of the Night Train.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what it was. That's what that's what it was.
Adventure from the original Deadlands that they had updated to work with the Savage World.
Yep, I knew there was something.
I still want to run that. We had talked about doing it in October at like around Halloween, and then I
would be fun.
had my accident and was in bed for 2 months.
So, put me in, coach. Put me in.
That would be a cool idea.
I do have that. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, we're more familiar with the system now. That would be fun to play the through the Night Train scenario.
It's an interesting scenario, one in which the party, if it's under strength, is probably going to die.
I think it's three scenarios. I think that all three were published, that because I used parts of that for my vampire game. I didn't read it, but I looked for the vampires. But I think there's 3 scenarios in there. It's written over the course of 3 scenarios. So
yeah,
more vampires. Burn the
more vampires.
Yeah,
vampires. Just burn the whole town down next time. That's the
answer.
That's the answer.
Okay, fair enough. So, all right. Well, with that, we appreciate everybody sticking around to listen to this point. Again, if you have experience with Savage Worlds, please share it down below. We'd love to hear how you play the game and what you like about it, or why did you stop playing Savage Worlds entirely and go to this other system. Let us know. Yeah, we're interested. So, Jeff, how can they talk with us outside of the comment section in YouTube?
They can find us on most social media: Blue Sky, Facebook, Threads, Twitter. Look for @Rollwise. If we're on there, you'll find us. You can also email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you joining our table. Roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there, everybody.
Right. See ya.
Thanks.